Hello, everyone. Hope you saw the Instagram stories update, giving you guys and gals a quick note that Robert Edward Grant is going to be coming on for a discussion. And I actually see he just joined right now. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Just to kick things off, drop where you're watching this from, like which city, which town, which country. Let us know. And I see Robert's request here.
Hey,
Hey,
how you doing?
good. Yourself?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm actually in my office this morning because I had
Okay.
a board meeting that just got finished. So it's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking that it's been about a year, right? I think it was
Has it
like
been
right.
that long already?
I think so because it was right around the COVID kind of, March time, last year.
We've
I
been in
think
COVID for a year.
I know. Everyone's saying from the beginning, like, I think it'll only be 3 months. Okay, so 6 months, eight months. Okay, come on, guys. A year? Seriously?
I
So,
know. It's
yeah.
nuts. Totally
Mhm.
nuts. How have you been?
I've been great. I actually moved. When we did our last podcast, I was in like a temporary rental. I sold my last house and I was sort of in this in-between space looking
Hmm.
for a new place. So now I've moved to this new home and it's a century home, which is really cool. It's from 1860. So it's been like updated and modernized since then, but it had some character and that, yeah. So me and my wife have moved here now and it's really nice. Yeah.
That's exciting. Well, I see that you've got a little bit more, some goat. I guess it would be kind of a goatee going there than you had last
Yeah.
time too.
Funny enough, this actually reminds me of like the ancient Egyptians. I mean, a lot of the pharaohs
Yeah,
used to actually
totally.
patch something, right? But it's this long sort of
It's
thing.
very Sumerian. It's very
Yeah, yeah, it
Babylonian.
is.
You got Babylonian
Some
talking.
people have asked where I'm from, and I'm half. My father's from Cyprus, which is like close
Oh
to
yeah.
Turkey, out of the
Hmm.
Middle East. So, yeah, so it's kind of reminds me of that as well. But I'm only allowed to grow this so long before the wife freaks out, and then I have to. She doesn't necessarily like it to go too long. It's I get to know.
Let me
Yeah.
see if I can get this light on also. One second here. There we go. That should be a little better. All right.
Yeah, looks good. So I figured I would reach out to you, and I sort of had this thought for the new year. I was thinking like, let's just start messaging people and get these conversations going, especially with all the censorship and everything happening. I feel like these conversations a lot of people really appreciate them and they need them. And I say that because as a viewer of other people's, channels and online social stuff, I really appreciate when people get on and do these things and have these chats and, they're not censored or removed or, flagged or whatever it is. So, that's why I reached out to you and I thought you have so much information to offer this community here and, even your own followers as well and anyone that's new to both of our channels. I think you have so much to offer. So that's why I reached out to have this chat. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking this time to get on here and have this conversation.
Thank you. No, it's been such a bizarre time. I mean, I can't even imagine. There's been nothing. I'll be 52 in May,
Mm,
and I cannot remember anything like this in my entire life, not even close, that what
hmm
we're experiencing. So, but I'm also really grateful because at the same time we're having all this bizarre kind of polarity and everything, people are really, really going next level. And as we go next level, what's going to happen is you're going to find more and more of that polarity. So it's just sort of the balancing that the universe basically takes on. So I believe that it really just comes down to how we decide to perceive what's happening around us. And we can get stuck in the muck of it and get pulled right back into the polarity again, or we can transcend and come out of it and also come up with new solutions. It's not that, the world is a bad place. It's not that people hate each other. I really do believe that we're just seeing a reflection of how people are sort of dredging up now all kinds of stuff within their own psyches and subconscious that is yet to be resolved. And we're seeing all the things that we don't like about ourselves all around us. And it's learning to accept and love that I think is really the important part. And this has been really a difficult and challenging time for me too on many levels because you know, I had COVID in December, and it was a weird. 5 days later, I was in my living room watching television, watching something on the news, and my wife came running down the stairs because the kitchen was on fire. And she's like, "Didn't you smell that?" And I said, "Smell what?" You know, I didn't. She said, "There's smoke all around." And like the thing on the stove was burning, and she was putting our kids down to bed. And I was like, I didn't smell it at all. And so that's how I knew that I needed to get tested for COVID. And so I got a test the next day, and I tested positive. And so, of course, I went into isolation. And this was the week before, you know, Christmas. So it was the 14th of December. And I have two small kids, so I didn't want to miss Christmas with my family. You know, how long is it going to take for me to test, you know, negative again? Because you just don't know. Some people it takes, you know, a month or two. And so I was in isolation. It was tough because I couldn't be around my children, especially I could hear them doing things, you know, down the hall and whatever. I'd see them when I'd walk outside into the hallway to go outside or just sit outside and meditate or something. And they weren't allowed to come and hug me. So it was this total forced isolation thing. And luckily, no one else in my family, no one else got it. And I had no other symptoms, really. I kind of got through it. And a week later, on the 21st, so the day of the conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter, you know, everyone was kind of looking up at the sky. I was celebrating because that was the day I tested negative and I got to spend Christmas with my family. And I know a lot of people have not had the experience that I had, which was really kind of no symptoms for COVID. And I don't want to minimize, you know, the challenge and suffering that a lot of people have gone through. That just wasn't my particular experience. I will say it did not at all feel organic. Let's put it that way. Mm-hmm. It felt almost like nanobots. I could feel it. I'm very sensitive to these types of things, and I could feel it kind of going and knocking on each door of my immune system. You know, one day I would have a sharp pain in my stomach that would just be momentary, and then that would be gone. And then the same thing in my leg. And then I had a bizarre bloody nose. I mean, it was just the weirdest kind of litany of things that came up. And I was, of course, checking pulse oxygenator, pulse oximetry, excuse me, pretty regularly, but I never went, you know, lower than a 95, which was, you know, still a normal range. So I never had any real symptoms. But the interesting thing is, and I think this is very pertinent to what we're facing right now with freedom of speech versus hate speech, right? Versus sort of violent speech. And my outcome of all of this is I got my smelling back, right? So I lost only my sense of smell. I never lost my sense of taste. But my sense of smell was gone. And about, you know, 2 days after I tested negative, so about the 23rd of December, I could smell things. And I thought I had all my smelling back, but I didn't. Because then my wife was, you know, my son is only a little over a year old, and, you know, he's still in diapers. And so whoever smells it has to clean it up, right? Whenever it's time to like change the diaper. So it's like, well, you smell it, you clean it up type of thing. And I didn't smell it. And my wife says, you know, why didn't you clean up the diaper? And I said, because I couldn't smell anything. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. But yeah, but good. Good call. She came up to me afterwards, and I could smell other things. I'd already smelled flowers. I'd already smelled perfume. I'd already smelled, you know, cookies, baking, Christmas cookies, stuff like this. But she took this dirty diaper, right, that's like wrapped up like a bomb, and put it right up against my face. And she's like, breathe in, right, suck that in. And I was like, and I couldn't smell a thing of it. So I realized that I only got my sense of smell back for the good things that smell nice. I can't smell the bad things. How bizarre is that? That's strange, yeah. That is super strange. So maybe there's like frequency levels within smelling, and, you know, higher frequency smell I can smell, and the lower frequency smell I can't smell. I don't know. But all I know is I can't smell bad things, right? And it's interesting because at first I was like, well, that's not so bad. You know, at least I can smell the good things. I can smell, and I still can't smell the bad things. Really? I was about to ask, yeah, is it
continued. Wow.
Still
Okay.
not back yet. And it's now gotten to the point, it's been about, not quite a month, but it's gotten to the point where I'm like, man, I miss the bad smells.
Yeah, you want the full spectrum. You want it all. That's what I would want anyways. I mean,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And is that not a metaphor for where we are right now in a way?
Yeah.
Because the good smells don't smell as good when I don't have the contrast to associate them with.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love the sunlight, but I also love seasons. I mean, we went out the other day here in Southern California yesterday. 2 days ago, it was 90 degrees. 90 degrees. We don't get 90 degrees in January. That is very bizarre. I mean, and it used to be when I first moved to Southern California, we didn't get really 90 degrees much, at least by the ocean, even in the summertime. So 90 degrees here. So something is definitely changing with the planet because we've had literally no winter this year, like zero. It's just like been continual summer, and the leaves didn't even fall off the trees in my house.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. This is weird. It's like perpetual summer or spring or something. It's very bizarre.
Uh-huh.
So I decided that, if even though I love, summertime, I enjoy winter. I like to have winter. I like the contrast. If you love the light, you could sit in a room with the light all day and all night. But imagine if the sun never went down at night. Would we appreciate the sun as we do? Right?
No.
Probably not. So this is why I am, and some people may not like that I have to say this, but I don't really care, I guess. I've stopped caring what other people thought about me or what I do or, who I want to be or who I am, many years ago now. You just have to kind of like believe in yourself and believe in what you want to do and focus your life in that way and try to love yourself. And in so doing, you'll end up loving everyone else around you, even the people that don't like you. So, it used to be that whenever I'd see someone on my page, I would, if they were like an adamant flat earther and they like to argue and got really, really aggro, I would try to very politely, in the beginning, I would try to very politely kind of dialogue with them and get their perspective. And then if they got really aggro, because it often devolves into that, then I would just be like, okay, you're on ignore. And if they get really rude to other people and start calling them names and stuff like this, and it starts becoming kind of like angry speech, then, from time to time, I would block them off of my page. And I never thought much about it because I thought, geez, it's my page. It's not like, they can still have do whatever they want on the rest of the platform. But until recently, that's been kind of my philosophy on this, until I had the smelling thing.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I decided, you know what? I'm not going to block people anymore because it actually diminishes from my experience. And it's such an interesting thing that just at the same time that I'd made that decision, that now we're seeing all of this sort of censorship stuff happen, right? And so there's kind of two arguments, which is let's attack hate speech. Let's not condone violence. Yesterday, Tim Cook came out with a statement, the CEO of Apple, and he said, there is no intersection between violent speech and free speech. And so it's really caused me to think philosophically about this.
Yeah.
First of all, as a recipient, as an experiencer, I tend to disagree because I believe that, while I'm not a fan at all of hate speech, I don't believe in it. I don't like to see it. It really bugs me to the point where I used to, bounce people off my platform. Now I appreciate that it can exist more. I can accept that it exists and that people have different perspectives on what truth is. And that, now I'm starting to realize, and I talked about this, with you last time, which is that if you look at, this cylinder from only one side, you might think it's only a circle. If you looked at it from this side, you might think it's only a rectangle, but the higher knowledge is it's a cylinder, right? So we get stuck in this polarity all the time. And we start to hate the negative. We always want to move towards the light. Well, the night is darkest just before the dawn. It's the darkness that allows the light to be brilliant. And the two have to come together. Even the word, I only learned this last week from Trimorphic, and if you're listening, thank you for teaching me this. The word guru, which we think of as teacher, right? Or someone who brings enlightenment, is actually because the etymology of the word gu and ru, they're two kind of words that have separate meanings that get smashed together into guru. Gu means darkness, and ru means bringer of light. So literally enlightenment. But it has the backdrop of the dark, that the dark and the light are symbiotic. They need each other, right? And if they can learn to accept each other, then incredible things can happen. Creativity explodes. And this is where shadow work comes in. And so, you know, I believe that freedom of speech is critical. It's critical for democracy. It's critical for society. It's critical for us all to learn empathy. And if we don't have those opportunities to have disagreement, that's not it's not a utopian world in my mind. It's the disagreement and it's the bad smells that actually bring texture and context to our experience. And it's about us learning to love those things, even though they may not be aligned with our own perspectives and viewpoints.
It's funny you've had that experience on your Instagram, because I've literally gone through the same thing, especially with people just, you know, starting to, you know, harass other people and stuff like that. I've used restrict in a lot of cases because I believe it just lets that person go on endlessly and no one else really sees it. But it's interesting to look at that. So
I didn't know that there was a function like that. That's pretty funny. It's like, I'm going to put you in timeout. You're going to go in timeout.
Exactly. And no one else is really disturbed by it. They can just comment on forever. So, you know, that works as well. If you don't want to completely block them, you know, maybe a consideration. I do completely agree with what you're saying. And the fact that you've expanded so much from your personal experience of smelling, you know, the good and the bad to now thinking of that more philosophically is really interesting as well. I do the exact same thing. And it is, the darkness really does require the light. It almost reminds me of whenever I post up something to do with like, you know, the devil or Christ and Satan, and, you know, the two polarities, and they really do come together in a way and create this evolutionary process, I would say. And that's what we're going through right now, is this new evolution. I think people are going to evolve from this. And I'm feeling there's going to be some sort of split in terms of the internet, in terms of people going towards the non-censored route, you know, and then people that are staying more on like mainstream social media internet. I feel like it's almost been infected in a way. So it's like we're going to have this divide where a lot of people are going to be on this. It's more like a dark web-esque type of thing that is going to start to be formed, and people are communicating there. I think that's what has.
And that's why in a way, that's kind of why I started my company, Crown Sterling.
That's right. I was going to ask you about that. Yeah.
Basically, we had an offsite meeting a couple of years ago, and we determined that the biggest issue that was going to be, you know, for the world to face over the next several years was about data and data sovereignty, and who was going to own your data, and if it was going to be you or if it was going to be someone else. And actually, in 2018, data became the world's most valuable asset. It's not gold, it's not platinum, it's not silver, it's not any precious metal. And you know, you think about it, it's like now we have asteroids that are approaching Earth that they think have more gold on them than the reserves of Earth.
Yeah, right? I saw.
So you could really get messed up if all of a sudden Elon Musk figures out a way to, you know, mine an asteroid, and all of a sudden all the gold becomes kind of really worthless because it's no longer as scarce as it once was. So all these things are kind of happening at a pace of change that's so radically fast right now. So fast. Even our time is speeding up. The Earth's spin, you know, physics.org just came out with an article last week that basically said that our spin is speeding up, and they're actually considering having to change very slightly atomic clocks to make up for that difference, right? That they may have to get rid of the leap second, right? And you know, these are all things that the amount of unprecedented change we're facing right now is miraculous, and it's beautiful, and it's exactly where we're supposed to be. But as we get through this process, it's going to be sometimes a bumpy path. We're going to have to learn lessons by having, you know, things in our lives like not being able to smell the bad smells. But that for me became a real appreciation and caused me to act differently on, you know, non-censorship. And now all of a sudden I see that censorship showing up, you know, in different various places all over the place. And I believe that, you know, in the movie The Matrix, they have kind of this, they have Neo who's hooked into this machine, right? He's providing energy. It's like an energy for all the robots in the AI world, right? And there's this weird dystopian future. They make this dream within a dream. Well, in a way, that's kind of what some of these companies are doing. It's just not energy, it's data. And how is it that, you know, the things that we spend the most money on, right? Usually, it's funny. I went to Fiji a few years ago, and I spent a week and a half on the island with one of my friends and his family, and the guy that was the owner of Fiji Water, you know, the one with the square bottles, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
guy that was owner of Fiji Water is like the largest landowner on this island. It's called Wakaya in Fiji, and in fact, it's kind of funny, but not funny. But the village people that live there all are forced to call him their king. It's the weirdest thing. It's like
Okay.
beyond weird.
Yeah.
And so he's telling us the story of how he got control of Fiji Water, which is a terribly sad story and nothing I would ever, you know, want to relay, because it's like almost like something you would imagine came out of, like, you know, 19th century, early 19th century colonialism. It's really ugly. But basically what was interesting about, you know, this whole experience for me when I was in Fiji is to learn how their process, you know, for getting the water and everything works. I was able to kind of learn that, and that was valuable. At least I got to have that perspective. But I also found through this process that, you know, whatever it is that the world can claim is scarce can be made valuable. So there's not so much gold. So let's buy gold and then make sure everyone knows it's scarce. And you probably heard about this with De Beer diamonds, right? So they say that De Beer has tons and tons of diamonds that they don't release so that they can constrict it and make sure that the price of diamonds stays high, right? Even though now you can make synthetic diamonds that are really amazing, right? You almost can't even tell the difference. And so when you think about it, the things that are scarce would be like natural resources. So we believe that energy is difficult to mine, so therefore it's scarce, so therefore we pay for it. We believe that clean water is scarce, therefore we put it in bottles, we package it up, we buy it low, and then we sell it high, right? We believe that, you know, eventually someone will probably say clean air is scarce, and so therefore you have to have this machine that allows you to carry clean air with you, and then you'll be paying for air, right? And so every time we have some sort of resource, there's at least some foundational basis for why it's scarce, and therefore why it has value, right? You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
If there's no scarcity, it doesn't have the same value, right? Well, how in the heck is data the most valuable asset on the planet then? Is not data infinite?
Each individual's data, you mean?
Yeah, every day there's more data, right? There's tons and tons of data, petabytes, I mean, tons and tons of data.
Yeah.
How is it that this data is so valuable when it's infinite? Because it should be scarce. You know, they say buy real estate because they're not making more land, right? And that's kind of how people think. Well, then Elon Musk says, well, I'm going to Mars, and now I'm going to start selling plots of land on Mars, right? Which is probably not that far away.
Yeah, and did you hear about Bill Gates? Now he owns like the most farmland in the United States or something like that.
I did not know that. See, because
Bill Gates,
these guys know, you know, you want to know why Wall Street is on such a tear right now? It's not because Wall Street and companies are so valuable. It's the same reason why houses in Southern California are going above their ask price. It's the same reason why Bitcoin is going through the roof, or it's gone up so much.
Mm-hmm.
It's a flight out of the dollar. People are terrified of the dollar because they know the dollar, the only way that it can solve its debt crisis now, because we printed $6 trillion now with this last package, you know, our total, you know, GDP of the United States is $21 trillion. So when all this is said and done, about half of our GDP is going to have become new printed money. Well, what does that mean to the value of the other dollars that were there before? I mean, if I had a company and I issued 50% more shares, then everyone else's share value goes down. Well,
Yeah.
you don't notice it versus other currencies because they all have the same sovereign risk. All of them do. And they've all been practicing monetary policy that's not dissimilar from what the United States has been doing. So this means that people are buying gold, they're buying land, they're buying, like Bill Gates, they're buying cryptocurrency, they're buying stocks. And I'll make a prediction that within a year, you'll be able to see the stock market quotes and prices, not only in dollars, but also in Bitcoin.
That'd be wild. Yeah.
It's coming. I 100% see it coming. So,
Mhm.
so when you think about it, how is it that data is the most valuable asset? You really have to stretch your brain on that, because
Yeah.
then you start thinking, well, okay, I could make an argument also about water. Water is a self-contained kind of ecosystem. We have more water on the planet than we could ever use. And every time someone uses it, it replenishes. As nature's conservation on this is really perfection, right? It's really perfection. But you could say, well, we don't have clean water, but we have mechanisms of desalination that work on aircraft carriers. I've been on an aircraft carrier that make 50 million gallons of fresh water every day out of ocean water, every day. So it's possible to do. I know an 18-year-old kid who made a little carbon graphene device that hooks onto a little bucket for water that you could take to Africa, and it turns, the swampiest, nastiest looking water into crystal clear water.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible stuff. And so we sell it because we're willing to buy this notion that, oh, it's in a plastic bottle. That means there's a limit. We put a monetary value to it, right? Now, in a way, what we had to do with data, and it hasn't really been it's been, 4 or 5 companies. It's not the data that's so valuable. It's the control of that data and how people can access that data, and then how they can sell that data. If you haven't seen Social Dilemma, you need to watch it on Netflix.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
It's pretty good, right? And the line that everyone came away with in that film was, if the product is free, then you're the product.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just that nobody now knows what the value of the data we're giving up is. Nobody understands it because there's no marketplace for it. There's no place for you to go and see. Just like in that show, Social Dilemma, it's like, okay, this guy's data is worth this much. He's got this much. They had those 3 guys that were the same guy dressed differently and kind of different hairstyles, et cetera. And they're like creating this arbitrage trade. They're like, okay, and I get 3 cents for this particular amount of information, where his location is right now. Oh, no, I got another buyer that's going to buy it for 4 cents. There's no market like that, because those exchanges are occurring, but there's a giant middleman, and that's what the social media companies are doing. So there is value. When I was in college, I had no money. I had to pay for my own college and everything. I had a scholarship, thankfully, but I had nobody was paying for my school. When I was 18, my parents bought me luggage for my birthday. Because that's like, here's your luggage.
Yeah.
Go. And they were nice. It wasn't like, fuck off, but it was like, go figure your life out. You're 18, you're on your own. And it's the best thing that ever happened, right? Literally the best thing that ever happened, because even though I hated it at the time, it taught me self-reliance right away. So when I was in college and I was broke ass like everyone is, right? My friends are like, hey, let's go sell our plasma. Let's go sell our plasma. Let's go basically give some blood.
Yeah, yeah.
I see a day, if there were a way for all of us to be able to put a fence around our data, to create an exchange for that data and have value for that data. So what I did is I created a new approach that allows you through encryption, because if you want to encrypt whatever it is you have today as a consumer, there's nowhere for you to go to do it. You could do it on a mobile app, but if it's outside of the architecture of that app, you can't do it. So, and not only that, but all the current encryptions are all subject to the same mathematical risks that quantum computers can crack, and also that we have found geometric solutions for. So we're on the verge of a major sea change worldwide because of quantum computing and because of what we know mathematically, that it's time to have an entire releveling. There's going to be a releveling of the deck. And I see an opportunity for people now to be able to, for the first time possibly in human history, to be able to control their own destiny by having control over their own data and no one else having control over it. And for that kind of thesis to actually work and operate, you have to kind of allow for true freedom of speech. And you know, you can't, we're not going to go, it's funny, I think it was 2002, I went to see a movie. And the movie, when I lived in the Bay Area, I was living in Palo Alto. And so I went to the movie theater in Mountain View. And I sat down in the theater, and next thing I know, Steve Jobs is sitting next to me. Steve Jobs.
Okay.
And he had his 13-year-old boy there with him at the time. And we're sitting down to watch the movie Minority Report. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm sitting next to like Steve Jobs just by chance. Like, what the hell? Because I've been a super, you know, follower of his career for many years. And I was like more interested in what he was doing, how he was reacting to the movie than probably the movie, although it was a good movie, right? But the thesis of the movie was they had these precognates who could like see the future, right, before the future happened. And so what they would do is they could stop crime from happening because they knew that the guy was going to commit a crime. Well, that raises all kinds of ethical questions, right? Which is like, wait a minute, how do you know he was actually going to commit the crime? You can't commit someone, you know, to prison because they might have done something, right? Are we so, you know, entangled to the future that our destiny is already preset? If that's the case, then if we know that Hitler's being born, does it make sense to just go ahead and have that baby killed?
Yeah.
Right?
That's a big philosophical question.
It's a big philosophical question, but I remember the part that was amazing for me was how in that film they were doing all this stuff. Remember how they were making these screens? And you could like move the stuff off where you wanted to look at, and you had this glove on, and you could do this. Steve Jobs was sitting there watching it going like this. He was like, so art imitates life. Okay, this was 5 years before iPhone. iPhone was released in 2007. Art imitates life, or life imitates art. I'm not sure which one actually does come first. Maybe the future and past are truly just entangled, and I actually do believe that. But I don't believe that people should be convicted or should be indicted over that which they haven't done yet, right? I mean, that we have a whole concept of innocent until proven guilty, right? There's a whole court of law process. And as we start to like break down society in the argument that we're going to get rid of hate speech and racist talk and everything like that, let's not throw out what millennia has proven has been the foundational basis of any functioning society. There's a reason why it's the First Amendment. And that freedom of speech has to remain in place. It must, even as much as we don't like to smell it or we don't like to see it. It has to be allowed to survive, or otherwise we lose everything. And I feel very, very strongly about that. And I condemn the actions of people that do things that are hate-oriented or racist or anything like that. But at the same time, I have to recognize that sometimes we have to tolerate those things in order for us to have the experience that we're intended to have. A, B, also that we all have the ability to not only speak, but think. Because the next thing that's going to happen is if we're limiting freedom of speech, we're going to be limiting freedom of thought. That's coming next.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel that that's the path of ascension, right? The path of ascension is not something that you basically are bound and tied and dragged into. You know, the Donald Trump video when he, quote unquote, conceded the election, right? I was kind of laughing because the media was referring to that as a hostage video, right? Where it looked like, you know, like he had no choice. He had to basically give this speech type of a thing.
Yeah.
And you know, it is what it is. You could condemn what he has done or what he has not done, and you have so many different viewpoints. Now, I'm independent. I sit on, you know, neither the Democrat or the Republican side. I sit right in the middle, and I believe that there will be probably this divide that's happening, right? And I want to be able to use our encryption technology, which is the only kind of encryption that can't be cracked. It's called a one-time pad. So when I solved the problem of prime factorization, which anyone could go on my pages and see, I've done so many posts on it over the last year and a half or so. But when I solved that problem, I thought, oh my gosh. Well, first it was through a prime prediction algorithm, you know, how to predict primes. And I solved that problem with Talal Quantum, who were coming out with a book in just another month or so, 2 months, called Philomath. And it's got kind of the compendium of all of our work over the last few years. But when I solved that, I was like, okay, I have a responsibility to see if this really is a problem for encryption, because I didn't really know, right? I had no real clue how encryption really worked at that time, and how it all depended on prime factorization. Like literally all depends on prime factorization. And even Bitcoin depends on something called modular factorization. So it's just another form of factorization. It's just using powers instead of just, you know, two factors that multiply by each other. It's like taking a number to its power, then gives you a public key. And then you have to find where it lands on a clock. And that's what modular means, like in a 17-hour clock landing in position 12. And so that's how you solve it. But it's similar. It's a very similar problem. And that's called the discrete logarithm. So I set about trying to figure that out, and found that everything, like bizarrely, comes back to the simplicity of right triangles. And that every number becomes a right triangle, and that the side C, if you remember a squared plus b squared equals c squared, Pythagorean theory, right, that theorem, you just take side C minus side A, and then side A plus side C, and those are the two prime factors. And the square root of the prime of the semi-prime number you want to factorize, or the public key, is the height of the triangle. So the relationship is an entanglement that is the square root of x times y, x and y being the two prime factors, and c being x plus y divided by 2. And once you have one of the other sides, and you can derive that through a method that we found geometrically, then with one number you can solve, you know, like if you take a number from the future, what would the past and the present have to be to multiply together to create the probability of that future? You can now take a point in time in the future and solve the past and the present that would be necessary to occur to create that equation. It's the same mathematics of time. So and that's why it's the foundational math of encryption, because you take 5 times 7 equals 35. 35 would be a public key, albeit a very small one. And we all know that. That's easy to do. So it's a one-way street function, 5 times 7. But if you start with 35 and put lots more digits on 35, trying to find the two numbers like 5 and 7 that multiply to create it is like searching for a needle in a haystack. And the only way you can do it until now is to test every number, right? So that becomes a real problem, and that becomes a logarithmic time problem. And so it takes billions of years to do that search on a computer, the larger the number series. Well, no more, because embedded inside of the public key is the DNA that points to the right triangle. And then from the right triangle, it's an easy solve. So it's fixed. It's really fixed. So with that, then I said, okay, well, then we have to create a new encryption that's not based on mathematical equation, because quantum computers can figure out any kind of, you know, one-way street problem mathematically. And even NIST knows this. And if you just look up, is Bitcoin quantum computer safe? There's a Deloitte article on Deloitte's webpage, Deloitte being the large accounting and consultancy firm, that did an analysis of all the Bitcoin accounts and found that 25% are P2PK addresses. Like this guy that just a couple of days ago said, oh, I got 220 million in there, I can't find my keys. Right, I only got 2 tries left.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
amazing.
be calling him at the right time. So once our cryptocurrency is on the exchanges, I will be calling, and because everyone is watching those P2PK addresses so closely. They're worth over, you know, $100 billion.
Yeah, it's right, like 140 or something, right?
Yeah, it's a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
And so everyone's got that problem, and I'll be happy to provide a service to help those guys emancipate some of their Bitcoin in those P2PK exposed addresses. The other addresses that people use today are P2PKH. They have a hash on them. Those are safer. But the issue is you have to remember to change your address every time after you receive or send money in and out of your wallet. Okay, as long as you do that, you're safe. If you're not changing it every time, it's exposed. And quantum computers are out. So the encryption community, the cryptography community has kind of been asleep at the switch. They haven't come up with a new approach to this in 40 years. Not 40 years, actually, since 1977. We've used the same encryption since 1977. We've just made the numbers bigger and bigger, right? Because they're depending on thinking, oh, well, there's always going to be a set amount of time. Well, quantum computers with, X, ones and zeros, and then X also as superposition can get around that problem. We have teleportation computers now, quantum computing, that are sending photons to satellites. China just did it, right? And they were able to keep 90%. So just like Star Trek teleportation type stuff, you wouldn't want to send a person that way and have them only be 90% transported. But still, it's pretty incredible that they are doing it. And it's real science. So the thing is that my vision is that there will be an exchange for your data, that on our platforms, we will never, ever own any one iota of your data. All we want to do is help facilitate you create an exchange so that you can actually get value for your data. Because I see this as the most valuable asset in the world. And each of our tokens is backed by 1,000 uses of our uncrackable encryption one-time pad. And you can look up one-time pad on Wikipedia, and you'll find all kinds of proofs on one-time pad. They've been recognized as the best and quantum-proof encryption for a long time. The only reason why they're not used digitally yet is because they're inefficient, because it takes a key that's as long as the data that you want to send. So if I want to send you a 1 gigabyte key, then I have to send you, or rather, if I want to send you a gigabyte worth of information, I have to send along with it a 1 gigabyte key, which is very inefficient, right? Well, we solved that problem. In one number, using irrationality, just looking at this differently, in the square root of 2, there's an infinite amount of numbers that are all different and never repeating. There's no patterns inside irrational numbers. So now I could give you only one digit, and you could find, and I could tell you another thing, that I'm going to start from the 100,000th digit. So now I've sent you a total of 6 or 7 digits along with your data, and you can have a key in there that's 1 billion digits long. You could have an infinitely long key because it's just embedded inside of running the equation of the square root of 2 starting from X digit, right, going all the way out. So that allowed us to be able to do it efficiently, rapidly. We combined it with AI to make sure that it never kicks out the same number series twice. And the way that works is it's based on an AI system that actually writes its own music. And the music is never the same from one note to the next. It's impossible. It uses something called a linear regression that's a gradient descent function. And so it's writing music all the time. We actually, one day, I'm going to publish the sound of the music of the AI. It actually sounds pretty good. Okay. And we just tie irrational numbers to it. And there's an infinite number of irrational numbers that we can use. And then within each irrational number, the square root value provides another infinite pool of entropy. So this is very exciting because for the first time, there's really uncrackable encryption. And what people don't know is that all encryptions today are crackable. All are crackable. Not only because of quantum computing, they're crackable because the government has the ability to crack them using brute force. So they've liked the system in place. The system in place has served them well because they can crack into anybody's encryption with enough money and time. It just costs them $1 million to do it. And so nobody else is going to want to try to do that, but they have perfect purview rights on everybody. Doesn't matter, right? So they can use their systems to crack. They can find ways with money and power and lots of energy to crack encryptions today. But one-time pad, they can't. This is not based on mathematical equations. It's not a one-way street function like 5 times 7 equals 35, and then trying to reverse that function. The function here is information theory. Each character, that's why the key has to be so long. We just found a way to use nature's compression in how to do it, right? So we don't have to send these huge, massive keys. We just use the square root function to be able to do that. So what this allows us to do is to have an encryption that for each character, it is individually encrypted. So each character is individually encrypted. This is not like SHA-256, which is used on Bitcoin today. But I see this as really the key to consumers for the first time having access to their own encryption, right? I see this for the very first time, an opportunity for people to put a fence around their data.
Okay. And how do you see this marketplace coming to be? Like, how do you envision that?
We're creating it.
But where is it, like, do you see it as, I'm thinking, like, is it going to be through a mobile application, through a website, through
yeah, it's going to be
both, I
through
suppose?
it's going to be through a mobile application, but it may or may not be a mobile application that is required to go through Apple or Google Store or
Yeah.
Android or any of that. You know, it could
Yeah,
just be mobile
that's out the window.
responsive,
Yeah.
right? It could just be mobile responsive. But, you know, yes, that's exactly what it's going to be, and we are building that. So
Mhm.
so in preparation for that, we had to first launch our token, right? Which is the ability to encrypt. It has 1,000 uses, and there's a market price. If you were a corporation and you wanted to buy encryption, it costs you about, for a large company like Microsoft, it's about average of 3 cents per encryption. If it's a you know, a normal corporation, it's more like 5 cents. But none of these are one-time pad encryptions. What we have done is we've created a one-time pad encryption, and the backing of it is 1,000 uses. So, you know, today it sells for it was $30. Now it's $40. It just went up because we had such high demand. And you know, we see in the future, once people understand that the current encryptions don't work, that there's going to be a huge dislocation, right, on so many different aspects of society, right? There will be a huge dislocation on understanding of value as well, because this is not just encryption that protects Bitcoin and all the other, you know, cryptocurrencies. It's the encryption that, you know, safeguards bank accounts. It's the same encryption for everything. It's the two classes of encryption are elliptic curve and RSA. And believe me, that industry hates my guts. They hate me like you can't believe. It's like, you know, if the car industry hated Elon Musk, the encryption industry truly hates me. And that's okay, because I love and accept them. It's fine. You know, it's all part of this, you know, circumstance we're living in to experience. And all we have to do is learn how to fall in love with it. You could say that maybe Earth is just a giant escape room. And the path to actually escaping out of this place is to learn to fall in love with it so that you don't actually want to leave.
That's wonderful. Yeah. That's a wonderful way of looking at it. Absolutely. So now, with all this in mind, I did want to quickly touch on any kind of changing gears a bit, any meditation routines that you practice, because this is all technology stuff. But I'd like to quickly touch on, I know you mentioned sometimes, you know, especially when you, was it in the morning you said you do meditations, or?
Yes, I do. I do in the morning. I like to go outside and sit and watch the sunrise. And I was taught a meditation by a Buddhist monk friend of mine who came with us to meet the Dalai Lama when I took Nassim Haramein there with 7 other people. And we had, you know, 5.5 hour conversation with His Holiness at his palace at their request. And it was, you know, a kind of a teach-in on mathematics and physics. And before I left to go on that trip, my friend, Lama Tenzin's his name, he taught me something that is a type of meditation, which he calls a diamond consciousness meditation.
I like that.
And it involves the sunrise. So I like to sit and, you know, get in the same normal position of meditation, just back straight and breathing and breath work, etc. But watch the sunrise, and then of course close your eyes, and you do there's a special Ohm Chant, and it goes like this, Om, just like that, Om, which is like E would be I, Alpha, Omega, right? And it's funny because this is Tibetan. It's not something that's from Near Eastern or whatever. So I was like, that's an interesting chant for like Buddhist monks. And he taught me this, and I like to do that. It's very powerful. So, and you just keep doing the Ohm Chant like that. And when I laid in the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid for several hours, I've spent 5 nights in there. I did the same chanting meditation and found the right resonance frequency of the sarcophagus chamber, and it starts to go really loud. Whoa, 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 just like that, like super loud. And I've taken pictures of people that have done similar, found that resonance frequency, which is right about 117 hertz. It's low. And you just get in this autonomic pace of it. And I've got pictures where you could see like almost rainbows on top of the people, right? With the way the light somehow reflects or whatever. But remember that, the speed of sound is 343 meters per second in air. But through granite, it is 6,000 meters per second. So the entire King's Chamber is made of granite, gray granite, like a slate-colored granite, and rose granite, which has quartz crystal embedded all through it. It's super brittle. That's what the sarcophagus is made of. So you've literally got an incredible resonance chamber that is speeding up the speed of sound by 17.5 times its normal pace that we would hear it in air at. Remember, sound travels through dense media faster than it travels. So that's why it's faster. It's like 1,400 meters or so. I think it's 1,440 meters through water, right? And it's faster when you get to stone as well. Light is different. Light, the more things that it's in light's path, the more impedes the light, right? So that's why we like to measure it in a vacuum. But you've got this really special chamber in the Great Pyramid that does that, and that particular type of diamond consciousness meditation is super powerful. Now, the other thing that I like to do for meditation is, and I'm actually teaching a course right now on Access Elite, which is one of my companies, because I'm trying to move more things off of the current platforms for all the same reasons, that everybody says. It's not like I'm saying anything terribly controversial, although some might think differently after listening to this call. But I teach meditative geometry. And probably the most powerful thing that I think we can do to expand our consciousness is start to draw geometry with only 2 things. And, the only 2 things that I use, besides a pencil, of course, are a ruler and a compass. Nothing more. I think geometry allows us to see other viewpoints because we're looking always at the geometry from different angular viewpoints, right? And you could say that maybe the universe is all just one truth. But like blind men feeling an elephant, or blindfolded men touching an elephant, where one would touch the tail and say, oh, it must be a rope. And the other one hugs the leg and says, no, it's a column. And the other one, touches the mouth and says, no, it's slimy and wet. It's not any of those things. The truth is, all of them are right. They're only seeing or perceiving facets of an overarching larger truth, or maybe fractional perspectives. But maybe the number of the facets on that whole truth is something that approaches infinity. And so you've got a prism with something with massive number of facets on it, right? And if we took those fractional facets and we added all of them up, the sum of all of those fractions would add up to the number 1. And to me, expanding conscious awareness is learning how to take in more than just the narrow viewpoints that we have seen before. Mm-hmm. It's learning not to judge. It's learning also to be able to empathize with opinions that maybe run counter to your own. It's learning how to break out of things like conditioning biases or confirmation biases. All through the history of mankind, ethics and morality has been used as an impetus for the most heinous acts imaginable. A guy with a flock of sheep tending in his fields on a mountainside somewhere in the Middle East looks at the greener pastures and says, you know what? I want that land, but I can't justify just killing my neighbor. So you know, that guy worships a different God than I do. So, you know, I had a dream last night, pretty incredible. God visited me and told me to kill him and consecrate his land to him. So I think I need to do that. It's righteous. What we don't realize is that we all, every one of us, fall into confirmation biases. And the things that we judge in everyone else around us are the things that we, in fact, ourselves do, that we're just not consciously aware of. So by taking away, you know, the right for people to express themselves, and taking our data is like taking our memories. I have 15 years of information on Facebook that I'm worried now. So I've got to get all of it transferred over to my personal website, which is just the same name, which, by the way, I just learned that the new contract I supposedly signed on Instagram doesn't allow me to have a URL.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not. That's the same as my name on Instagram.
Yeah.
What the hell is this?
That was in there.
You know what? I would love to see someone file a class action on that. This is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it is. It is. After everyone's already sort of committed to these platforms, creating content and really helping build these platforms up, they just kind of slide these things in under our noses. And it's like a, you know, take it or leave it sort of scenario where a lot of people are saying, well, I'm leaving. I'm out. You know, that's, you know, it's a positive thing in a lot of ways, because people are creating these new platforms. And I'm not sure if you recall, but part of what I do, I have a digital media agency. I mean, we create things for people. We create mobile apps. We create social networks. Like, you know, we've had so many more inquiries for Instagram clones, you know, where with their own unique twists and stuff that are going to be sovereign, operate on their own servers, different data centers, all sorts of crazy stuff. So to me, it's not like it's frustrating. It's annoying, but it's like growing pains, you know, like we have to get through all that. We have to evolve through it. And then a lot of what you're talking about with the crypto is really in that direction as well. So it's really exciting. You know, it's frustrating, but it's also quite exciting. So
it is. It's an exciting time. So, you know, I wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
I accept it the way that it is. Everything is happening, unfolding in its evolution. I'm pretty good friends with Deepak Chopra. And he invited me once. He came to my office, and I was going through some math stuff with him. And on the whiteboard, I drew the Ohm symbol. And I said, you know, that's actually kind of like the shape of 369, right? It's just the Sanskrit way of writing a 9 is backwards, right? And then this thing that looks like kind of an upside down I right at the top of it. And then, of course, that really large looking 3. And he's like, what? And he goes, how did I not know that? And I said, well, Nikola Tesla kind of talked about it. And he said, where did he get it from? And I said, Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah, I saw that post you made. That was cool. Yeah.
And then he immediately grabbed me, because there were a whole bunch of people around. He goes, come. We went into another room, and he said, please come with me to Kerala. I'm going to Kerala in 2 months or a month and a half or something, and I'd like to have you go. And I've got this whole list of people that were like super, I won't mention names, but like really, really major players on the world stage. And some you would recognize right off the bat. And he said, we're all going, and we're gonna do this thing in Kerala where, you know, we'll have all of our Akashic records read, right? And so I was excited to go, but then I found out that it was right when I had kind of a very difficult crisis in 2016, so I wasn't able to go. And I called him, and I'd already actually paid for it too. And I called him and I said, I'm not going to be able to make it. And he said, Robert, everything is as it should be. And that's my philosophy on life. Everything is as it should be. We can fight against the you know, things happening in the world, or we can flow along with the change, right? And then find our way. It's not that you just kind of sit back and do nothing, right? You got to get up. I posted a quote by Leonardo da Vinci yesterday, which is like, people of accomplishment don't sit back and wait for the world to happen to them. They happen to the world. But you also have to realize that there are certain things that are just part of the transition of Earth, like 90 degrees in January.
Yeah.
Learn to love it. And I really believe that, you know, platforms and everything. And if you're interested in learning about Crown Sterling, you can go to crownsterling.io. It's .io. And all of our stuff is you know, that we build, the exchanges and everything are all going to be on the IPFS network, the Interplanetary network, which is, you know, blockchain protected. It's the best place to be. You can't remove it. So this is all the things that we're doing, and I'm very excited about where the world is right now. I think, you know, this last conjunction of 9 celestial bodies in a straight line, that was, wow. It was really only Mars, even Ceres was in there. It was really only Mars and Uranus that were not. And they were aligned on the other side of the sky. And to me, and of course it was, you know, 1, 11, 21. And so here we were, you know, another 11, kind of a portal situation. And it's an exciting time. The world's going through dramatic change, and the change exactly as it's supposed to happen, as it's supposed to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wonderful. And I love that you mentioned the story, rewinding back a bit of the chamber. I've actually started doing weekly float tank sessions. And I thought of you when I started doing them, because my wife started initially, and then she kind of got me into it. So I'm doing these like 1 hour every Sunday. And I've actually been microdosing psilocybin mushrooms as well for that process. Not like anything in terms of dose to the point where I'm blasting off totally, but I'm certainly getting some really nice, insightful, you know, perspectives, I guess you could say, towards everything. And it aligns a lot with what you're saying as well. So it's really wonderful. And I love that you mentioned that story. I was actually going to ask you specifically about the story of the sarcophagus and just that sound, that whoa, 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 whoa. It's amazing. I had a similar experience during a float session. I felt like the water around me was rippling out from my heart. It felt there's like this magnetic force, and it was just like, whoa, 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 in the water. It was amazing. Yeah.
On that topic, I really believe that the whole theme of the world now, it's not about brain consciousness. The higher knowledge doesn't come through the brain, it comes through the heart.
Yeah.
It really is the embodiment of the heart brain. The heart brain consciousness is 5D. It's not more brain. You don't learn more physics by studying more physics. You find the connection in the heart, and that then supercharges your thoughts. And finding the balance between the logos and the pathos. That is the story of the Apis bull sacrificing himself for his mother, right? Which is the dark sky. It is the dark universe. And his mother is the Hathor. And in February, literally the week before the quarantines, you know, end of February, early March, we were in Egypt. We made it back the day before they closed the border. Like, we'd have been stuck there for months. And we discovered the night before we came home 8 new stone reliefs in the King's Chamber. I posted them on my page. And one of them is 8.5 feet wide, and it's a very large cow and the Apis bull inside of the cow. And it's beautiful. And it's even got a heart shape over the cow, the Apis bull's heart area. It is just amazing. We live in a world that is so magical if we allow ourselves to see it. You know, some people think that there's no such thing as miracles. And other people live and realize that life itself is a miracle.
Yeah.
And I'm in the latter. I definitely believe that. And I wish all of you, I invite all of you also to join my meditative geometry class. If you're interested, you can find it on accesselitenow.com. And I invite you too, so that if you start drawing geometry, I'm telling you, there's something really magical about doing it. Just drawing it will change how you see the entire world. I promise you that. It's like a, you know, some form of guarantee that I would tell you. If you really get into it, it will change your perception. And it will expand your viewpoints. That's what geometry does. Thanks so much. Great to see you, my friend.
Yeah, really great to see you as well. I'm just going to flip on some questions here.
Sure.
I'd like to see if anyone has anything, because I do see some coming through.
Yes, I see someone just said, can you get past access to past classes? Yes, you buy there's like a membership thing on there. It's very inexpensive. Each of the classes cost $5, right? So it's an hour long. And if you buy a membership, they give like some discount on it. I'm the co-founder of this company. I started it a few years ago. It's taken off like crazy. And there's a fantastic CEO that runs it. Her name is Jenna. I mean, like one of the best CEOs I've ever worked with. And I worked with her for over 10 years now. And I was so proud when she became CEO. I was so proud of her. Yeah, they bounced us off because it hit the hour, I think.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're back now. We're back. So what
All
did
right.
Tesla mean about the secrets of the universe are in the numbers 3, 6, and 9? Is that the question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I suppose that's the one that I've chosen
Okay.
here. Let's see
All
if the
right.
other ones are still here.
So what Tesla means by that is that, oh boy, this is one of those things that's not an easy answer.
No, try and keep it. You touched on it briefly when you even mentioned the Deepak Chopra Ohm story. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
it's if you can expand out on that. But I mean, yeah, it's not an easy one, but try and keep it short and sweet, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. So the structure of space-time can be found in 2 dimensions, and what we look at is the flower of life. And that's like a shadow, right? But the circular version of that shadow. Within that, where all those circles overlap, make geometries. And you can make all geometries just out of the flower of life. It's also referred to as Metatron's cube. You may have seen that. So it also will make something called a cube octahedron. The cube octahedron in 2 dimensions would be a modular arithmetic 24. Now, on that 24 is what I found. So it'd be like 24-hour clock. Just think of a 24-hour clock on one dial face of a clock. What I found was that prime numbers only exist in the spokes 1, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, and 23. And then in the middle of those spokes, because 5 and 7 are flanking one spoke, right? So the middle of that creates a cross. It looks just like a cross, like a Templar cross. The middle of those always are digital roots of 3, 6, and 9, without exception. So the cube octahedron, the vector equilibrium, the tube torus of time as well, all of those are related to this 369, which 369 determines spin, angular momentum, and time, and gravity, and our experience. So the entire universe is based off of these 3 numbers, and 3 is the electron, 6 is a proton, and 9 is a neutron. So think of those are all the building blocks of matter in the universe around us. So the simple answer is, in my parlance, I guess, would be to say that the entire universe of this matrix of mind that we experience is based solely on those 3 numbers. Electromagnetism and gravity and radiation are based on 1, 4, 7 triplet and 2, 5, 8. We're also missing 3 numbers. If we move to a base 12 system, you should have 12 notes and 1 number in single digit integer for each of those notes. We're missing 2 in the middle that are between the numbers 3 and 4 and 6 and 7. And those would represent anti-proton and anti-electron. And anti-neutron is the last. It sits right in the position right where 10 is. So effectively, what we're missing is the mirrored opposites of those things in dark matter. And they're just numbers that are the exact same. Have you ever noticed that 2 and 5 is just an upside down representation of each other? Like the number 2 looks just like 5 upside down backwards. And if I took an upside down backwards 5, and which would be 2, and then a 5 next to it, I could create an omega symbol. Exactly, omega symbol. Because I would be doubling and I would be halving. And if you've noticed this before, 1 over 2 is 0.5, and 1 over 5 is 0.2. So they are literally mirror reflections of each other. We don't have those same mirror reflections of each other for 3, 6, and 9. So we're missing those positions. And I've written a lot about this. And that, to me, is really the secret of Tesla. All the math constants are in those relational positions in the middle of that cross. And they will always have digital roots of 3, 6, or 9 when looked at in the non-irrational form, which is what the 24-hour clock does. It gives us a map of how to find all the irrational numbers and what their relationships are to prime numbers. They're born between the prime numbers. They're literally in the spoke between the prime numbers always. And that's what makes those numbers special. We call them time numbers, in fact, because our entire time system is built on it too. How do we deal with when darkness wants destruction or enslavement? I can't read the rest of the question, so can you maybe read the rest of it?
I think that's actually it.
Okay. How do we deal with when the darkness wants destruction or enslavement? You know, that's a tough question. The first thing I would suggest is try to change your perception of it.
That's a great suggestion. That should be the first and only, actually.
So the reason I say that is, like, when I was at Bausch & Lomb, I wanted to take the company to the public market, held by the largest private equity fund. And I learned that we were going to be sold to a big pharma company, which is called Valiant, which the management team I was not a fan of at the time. And when I learned all this and I flew home, I was sick to my stomach. So I was going to leave the company. I threw up on the airplane. It was horrible. I have a whole TED talk about it. I was sick over this. So the next morning I was super, super sad and depressed because my hopes were dashed. And I thought, this sucks. You know, this is like the worst thing that ever happened to me. And I remember that next morning going out to get the newspaper in my driveway. I'm wearing my robe and I go out there to bend down to pick up the newspaper, and something popped into my head and I said, you know, today is going to be the worst day of my life, or it's going to be the very best day of my life. And it turned out to be the best day, because that was the day I decided to start my companies and really live my true authentic self in my dream. So sometimes bad things happen to us. And I don't want to discount that people have really bad circumstances that come up in their lives. But, you know, I remember being in college too. The teachers that I had in university, because it's been 30 years now, that were easy, that didn't expect much of me, that didn't challenge me. Honestly, I can't even remember their name. The teachers that really beat the shit out of me, that expected a ton from me, that, like, you know, made me do homework all the time and that I cursed every night when I went to bed, are the ones I remember the most. And I'm grateful for. So whatever the circumstance, you know, there's a great story that Ronald Reagan used to tell. And it was a story of two little boys on Christmas morning. And they're both like 5 years old, and one of them was super negative and the other one's super positive, right? So they hired a psychiatrist, the parents, because they wanted to figure out why these twin boys were so different. So the psychiatrist set up one of the rooms and put all the best toys in the house in that room. Like every toy you could ever imagine you would want. Then the other room, he fills it full of horse shit. And he takes the little boy that's the pessimist to the room full of all the best toys. And he swings the door open, and the little boy looks at it and he says, "Merry Christmas, this is all for you." And the little boy bursts into tears, and he's like crying, like hysterically crying. And so the psychiatrist says, "What's the matter? Why are you so sad?" He says, "Oh, I'm going to lose some of these toys. My friends are going to break them. Some of my friends might even steal them, right? And I didn't get exactly what I wanted." So the guy's like, "Geez, man, this guy's super downer," right? So then he goes to the next little boy, takes him to the room full of the horse manure, swings the door open, he says, "Merry Christmas." And the little boy's like, "Oh, goody, I'm so happy." And he says, "Why are you so happy?" He says, "Well, with all this manure, there's got to be a pony in here somewhere."
Yeah.
Life is 90% what we believe happened to us. That's what writes history books. Life is so much more our perception of what occurred than actually what occurred. This is why we have this phenomenon when 30 people are eyewitness to a crime. And my wife loves to watch all these crime shows. I'm like, ah. So then they interview all the eyewitnesses, and the eyewitnesses all have radically different stories of what they saw happen at the exact same moment in time. You know why? Because it's
back to the cylinder. Yeah.
Every objective truth we believe is really our own subjectivism. It's only the sum total of all perspectives that reveals the one truth. The fractions add up to one.
So back to meditation and geometry with that. Get the perspective. So I think it's a good point to end this. I do see other questions here, but honestly, I think, Robert, you answered a lot of them in our discussion. So I'd say for all those people, watch it back, and I'll have it up on the IG Lives. But thank you for taking this time. I really appreciate it.
Well,
I'm
good
sure
to see you, and
it's
I'm
amazing to see you.
such a fan of your work, and you know, I'd love to work with your company. I always have projects going on and stuff like that, and so
Sure.
If maybe you guys can tell us what all types of things you can do, and I'd love to introduce you to our programmers and such.
Yeah, I'll send you a message. There, right now, it's a team. Well, I've had the same company now, this one for 12 years, and then prior to that, I had another one for 7 years, and before it was acquired. The current team I have is about 15 to 17 people, designers, developers, animators, all that stuff. I mostly just kind of oversee and make sure everyone's on schedule, doing what they're supposed to, make sure everything's running smooth. That's like my job.
Your title is like Overlord?
Yeah, creative overlord. Yeah, and behind them with the whip. Program, faster, harder.
I don't see that.
Deadlines.
I don't see that. I see you more as like the conscious type, you know, that's like sort of like flying around like a Sumerian angel type of deal.
Oh, shoot. I don't know about that. Yeah.
Anunnaki, maybe Anunnaki style.
Yeah, Anunnaki, descended from the Anunnakis. Yeah.
Right.
I'll send you that info. And I was speaking to, I think it was your assistant or something, because I know you had a podcast as well.
Yes,
so
I want to interview you as well. I'm going to go ahead and post this too. So once it's up, I'll find a way to also record it, I guess. But I want to post it. I want to do a separate podcast with you. I'm going to be doing a podcast. The next one I'm doing is with Billy Carson.
Okay.
You probably know, right? Great guy. He does Forbidden Knowledge.
Yeah.
And I know I've seen him on your page before and stuff. And he's such a like a walking, I don't know what it is. He's like, he does so many different things. It's like
his page got removed, actually. His page got removed, and then he had to contact Facebook to get it back. I was shocked he got it back. But
Forbidden Knowledge got removed?
Yeah, it was either that one or his backup one, the Billy Carson one, but it got taken down, and then he had to contact the support, and then they put it back up for him. This was like a few months back.
Why did they take it down?
I have no idea. Maybe something he posted, or I have no idea. I assume that's what it was.
He's posting too much empowerment and love.
A lot of people are concerned, that their pages are going to get taken down. Honestly,
That's why, if you're worried about that with me, because it could happen any day. I mean, I posted a quote by Marcus Aurelius that is quoted all over the internet, like everywhere, that is, everything we see is perspective and everything we hear is opinion. That was the quote. That was the quote. And it got fact checked. And they said that even though he wrote a book called Meditations, and this is sort of like a paraphrasing of the entire book, or maybe a looser translation or something, they said, the fact checker said, Marcus Aurelius never said that. The book was entirely about perspectives being, our view of the world. It's almost identical what I've just been talking about just now. And they're like, no, he didn't say that. So you know what I did? I reposted the same thing. And I just made the quote come from me because I figured it sounded like something I would say anyway. And then it stayed.
Oh, wow. That's ridiculous.
Who's fact checking the fact checkers?
Yeah.
And when I just said that truth is your own subjective reality. Truth is your subjective reality, right? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You could be describing the terrible travesty of how you had a room full of toys given to you that you didn't want. And that's disgusting, right? That's your subjective truth. What I'm telling you, and science, by the way, is completely subjective. Look, we just completely blew up this last 2 weeks Stephen Hawking's theory of Hawking radiation and information annihilation coming out of a black hole. Because Stephen, is it really that is now erased? Because we only have a blurry one picture of a black hole. How the heck has anyone observed a black hole and actually can know whether or not information is annihilated coming off of a black hole after it gets into singularity or past the event horizon? How the heck could anyone know that, right? No. Is that really the truth? Or is it that the guy who was the proponent of his own theory died? And now the vanguard changed. And the new vanguard's in, and he's old enough and he's been around a long enough time and agreed enough with enough people on things that the physics hierarchy, you know, the powers that be, decide it's time to give him, he's been around long enough and he's kissed enough of the rings along the way to give him a Nobel Prize. Please. Science is the only thing that changes. Change is the only constant. And we've seen it all the time. You could say, you know, 50,000 years ago or 2,000 or 4,000 years ago, people didn't know pi existed. And if someone said that there's a such thing as pi, they'd be like, oh, you're evil, man. What the heck are you talking about?
You're evil. Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, our numbering system is arbitrary. You know, who came up with the base 10 system? That's arbitrary. No, it's not arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. It's part of consciousness. Each zone or dimension we pass into comes with new mathematics. That's why there's so much new math coming out now. Because the next dimension requires it as a foundation. It's like learning, you know, C language and then learning C sharp. C sharp lets you go into a whole nother realm of large numbers, right? It's a totally different thing. We need to learn these different layers of language of mathematics to be able to populate and program 5D.
Perfect. Love it. Thank you again.
Good seeing you.
Good seeing you. Thanks everyone for watching this. Appreciate it. Reach out to Robert, spam his DMs with love and hearts and emojis, all that.
All right, guys. Have a good day. All the best.